Today, only a small percentage of utility suppliers distribute invoices via EDI, and they aren't already joining P2P networks. For many companies, 25% of total invoice volume is related to recurring utility bills. This can include electricity, gas, telecom, water, etc. This can amount to over 5,000 utility bills each month for a medium-sized company that's processing around 20,000 total invoices per month. Ongoing manual tasks related to utility bills can hinder straight-through processing. They can result in higher costs and limit the visibility of key metrics regarding consumption, costs, and trends. I'm Scott Leahy, and this is Esker On Air. Today, I'd like to welcome back Dan Reeve and a new guest, Tim Porter. Dan, of course, is our Director of Sales and a frequenter of the podcast. Tim Porter is the Director of Strategic Account Sales at Urjanet. So thank you both for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.
Glad to be here, Scott.
Well, Tim, since it's your first time on Esker On Air, I'll start with you. Would you mind just giving us a quick introduction for the audience, who you are, what you do, and maybe a little background on Urjanet?
Great. Yeah, happy to do that. So I'll start with a quick snapshot of what Urjanet is, what we do. We're a platform, data as a service. We have a utility data platform that delivers electronic invoices and invoice data from over 7,000 utilities worldwide. We've integrated with, I think, close to 50 different countries worth of utilities, and are helping provide an automated feed to this kind of problematic niche of invoices that people need to access somehow. And we've done that fully with software. So that's really what we do. I've been with Urjanet for close to 8 years now, and had a great time watching us grow, and am responsible specifically for helping put together relationships with partners that make use of our platform as a part of what they're doing in their daily lives.
Well, great, and I'll rope Dan back into this as well, but this question's for both of you. Kind of a question we've been asking a lot lately, but as industry professionals, what are the trends that you're seeing most when we think pre-COVID versus post-COVID?
Maybe I'll start. This is Dan, a Director of Sales of Esker. There's been a big shift, and almost, for me, it really feels like COVID has lit a fire under companies that were either thinking about transformation, automating payables or receivables processes, and or companies that maybe had a process in place, but they weren't fully getting the results they wanted or the outcomes they hoped. So we're seeing a lot of companies revisit and looking at the systems they have and saying, okay, can we improve the process? Do we need to replace the system? Are there opportunities here? And I think a little bit of background, the backstory, the reason we came to talk with Urjanet is Bob Cohen, who is he's a thought leader in this space with Ardent Partners. He'd said to me, "Hey Dan, Urjanet, they're doing some really good, valuable work in helping enterprises get their utility invoices under control, get them paid, and improve visibility. And there could be a real service you could provide to your customers if perhaps you were to team up with Urjanet, maybe help get those invoices into the approval process quicker." And so, obviously, Bob writes a lot about different providers, predominantly in the procure to pay space. I think he's a real thought leader. And when Bob says go and have a chat with a company, I do, because I realize he's got good foresight, and he knows how he's got great ideas as to how to provide value to procure to pay professionals.
Yeah, some of the other trends that we've seen, and I would echo that Dan's sentiment, that it's really accelerated the migration to automation. I think the very first immediate thing the companies started to panic about and come up with immediate plans for, I know we had to do this here at Urjanet, is, oh my gosh, we're not going to be allowed to be in the office. We have to figure out how to make sure everyone has connectivity and can work from home. Do we have everything that we need? Does everyone have connectivity and computers? And all that immediately needed to be discovered and plans put in place to keep the companies running And after that, companies realized really quickly what parts of their operations that hadn't been planned for to be automated suddenly became, glaring. And all of a sudden, if you've enabled your workforce to try to be functional from home, but realize that there's a part of what needs to happen every day that can't be done from home, like manually processing invoices or checking the mail room and opening envelopes and scanning things, that suddenly becomes a real problem. And so this world of automation that we have decided to participate in has really gotten a boost over this COVID thing. And we don't want to say anything great about the environment that we've had for the last year nearly. But I think that is one benefit that's coming out of it, is that people are starting to find more efficient ways to do things when they're not able to be in the office.
And Tim, I think you were touching on my next question a bit at the end there, but what are the most common problems that people are telling you they're dealing with manual invoice processing?
It's, speed is one of the biggest ones. Automating lets you be in a position to pay invoices much more quickly and much more kind of on your timeline. We've seen often in some of these small municipalities where you're getting your water from, for instance, and sometimes your electricity, they'll give you only 5 days to pay. And I wonder in some cases that maybe this is a budgeted source of income for some of these small munis, but waiting for the mailman, reliance on the mail for an invoice receipt leads to missing invoices sometimes and late invoices. So I think speed is a real problem for manual processing. According to a study from IOFM that I had read, companies relying on manual methods can handle on average around 1,400 invoices per FTE per year, but companies that have implemented some form of straight-through processing, that number can go from 1,400 invoices to 22,000 per FTE per year. So that's clearly the goal, right? And there's massive improvements that can be made in speed and productivity. And that all that manual work just introduces the need for additional resources. Opening envelopes, printing PDFs, scanning documents, going to websites to download bills, all these different things that people do to try to get invoices. And this is really particularly, shown itself to be a problem and a fail point during this time of COVID. So the increased resources can lead to certainly a good bit of increased costs. Costs not just in people resources, in people costs, but also in late fees. I heard one company, late fees are a big problem in the utility world. And I heard one company that before they had automated their processes, particularly with utility invoices, they were so worried about shutoffs that they were spending 6 figures a month, so over $100,000 a month on FedEx fees, just in order to get those kind of almost late bills to the vendors on time to avoid the late fees. So they couldn't afford to have shutoffs, and the late fees in some cases were so significant that it was worth paying, big money to a FedEx truck to get the bill there the next day. So, that all kinds of trickle down costs and inefficiencies that are found in manual invoice processing.
Yeah, all great. Dan, did you have any other additional problems you're hearing about or seeing with manual invoice processing?
I think the common trend is CFOs, finance leaders, they're just being pressured to squeeze. Imagine you've got a wet dishcloth. You're going to squeeze that dishcloth and keep squeezing and milk out as much efficiency and as much water or as much sort of cost as you can. So I think a lot of companies are trying to get better control of their money in general. Be it, hey, let's make sure we're really efficient when we place orders, receive orders from our customers, and we send out the invoice, and we collect the money, we apply the cash. On the procure to pay side, I think companies just want early visibility because then they can make decisions. Okay, do we have a lot of maverick spending that we need to prevent? Or, what, is there an opportunity to consolidate spend? Is there an opportunity maybe to pay, as I think Tim was alluding to, is there an opportunity to maybe pay early and earn early payment discounts? Pay early and just keep the supplier. Some companies are still doing this, where they are paying early to protect their supply base, to keep them in business. or we can decide, are we going to sit on that cash because we clear the invoice and maybe we pay early, maybe we don't. I think this is what's led to a dramatic increase in interest in not just solutions like Esker, but also I think of folks like Comdata, CSI, these folks who are providing sort of immediate procurement virtual and procurement card capabilities, so that you can not only pay the supplier quickly, securely, but maybe you take the savings that you get from those type of programs, and they can be used to cover the cost of implementing a technology like an Esker or like an Urjanet. So I think there's, as we talked about applying fuel to this fire, I think that's not just on capturing the invoice from various sources, including utilities. It's not just about moving the invoice through, getting it coded and approved and better visibility. I think it extends all the way through to payment as well.
Yeah, and I think you guys are kind of going above and beyond on each question here. I think we're touching on, it seems like every time I have a question, you touch on it with the previous one, but are there, if we're talking about the actual AP automation solution, how specifically does an AP automation solution alleviate these issues?
Who are you directing that question to?
Well, yeah, I'll start with Tim to start here.
Yeah, and this may be more of a Dan question because we help with one specific niche of the invoice universe, but I think that the primary goal and benefit that you see from an AP automation solution in general is you're taking paper out of the process, and that allows for a lot of things that Dan was alluding to. Automation for routing and approvals, payment of invoices on your schedule, better visibility into what the spend is with by category, and just better visibility for those executives that are looking for that wringing out of the rag to get every last bit of cost savings and efficiency out of the organization. And there's just no question that there are some things that can be done better by people. There's no question, right? Putting on podcasts, leading a discussion. But there's some things that are just better done by software and technology, and routing and approvals and payments and collection of data and invoices. That stuff's just better solved, letting computers and software do that. Smart algorithms do that. So that's kind of my vision on the benefits that you should see from AP automation.
Yeah, Dan, I'm sure you've got something to add as well.
Well, I think Tim did a great job of answering my question. I feel I should give Urjanet a plug because one of the reasons Bob had said, hey, you should, and Bob and Tim have explained the value of Urjanet is, yes, Esker includes machine learning, AI, and we have a global network. So any invoice flowing through the network, dare I say it, from an organization's competitors or peers, we may well have seen that invoice before and have learned the structure and the trends. But the thing that I think Urjanet does that, obviously do many things, but the thing I found particularly interesting is I think I saw a metric, something like there's 8,000 or so utility companies out there, and the folks at Urjanet have sort of already gone and pre-mapped and captured the way that those utility companies produce those invoices, and they're able to sort of bring that data straight into a platform like Esker. So instead of receiving paper or a PDF, if my understanding is correct, what Urjanet are doing is, hey, well, we've already pre-mapped that. We can bring all that content straight in, and we're just feeding the data into a tool like Esker. There's little learning or mapping or coding needed. Is that right, Tim? I'm doing my best to describe what you guys are up to, but I'm not sure if I'm accurate.
No, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. Basically, what our platform has built is a network of connections. We call them templates that know the structure of specific utility vendors' invoices. We know where they're stored. We typically are using kind of the front door method, the user permissioned method of having them link their utility accounts online with us, with our platform, so that our software can navigate a website to where the bills are stored, download those bills, check every day to see if a new one's shown up. And as soon as it does, we download it and extract data from it and provide it as a data feed. to whatever system it needs to get into. So we have used with software what some folks might be doing as kind of their first step of automation, and that's eliminating the mailman by having people log in and download invoices. Well, we have software that logs in and downloads those invoices and then extracts the data from them. So that network of connections to 7,000 plus invoices are utilities that we've built, requires a lot of care and feeding and a lot of development work. We've been at it for about 11 or 12 years now. And that really is probably I guess if we have an asset, it's more than our people. It's that set of connections that we've got. But you described it well, Dan.
Well, it makes me think, you talked about how business is changing and how folks don't want to have to go in the office to pick up the invoices. And dare I say it, we're seeing, I've just shut down our office here in Denver to be safe. And I think we're probably going to see more and more people working from home again, if they weren't already. And one of the things I think that you guys bring to the table is, to give you an example, I know that we, post-COVID, will be renegotiating with suppliers saying, don't send us paper. We don't want it. We don't risk being in another situation where we're having to force somebody to go into the office to pick these things up. We can pay you fast if you give it to us electronically, or at least give us an image or a PDF. I think what I see from you folks is, it could be difficult, perhaps, I imagine, to turn to your utility provider and say, hey, I need a flat file from you folks. But you folks have already done that groundwork, and so individual enterprises aren't having to go and sort of negotiate and ask for a favor from their utility. You've already done that you've mopped that up, so to speak, and you're able to pass it on to enterprises electronically. So I think for me that's interesting, because you've done the work. As you said, you've got many years, and you've done that groundwork for enterprises. I'm just not sure that enterprises realize this is available.
Yeah, and then coming back to you, Tim, you mentioned the niche nature of what you guys do earlier. We've talked a little bit about some pain points, but are there any other unique pain points when it comes to the utility invoices? And kind of two-part question: what are organizations that you see doing to treat those pains?
Yeah, so utility invoices are a bit of a unique category. It's one that is still mostly paper-based in a lot of organizations, and there are a handful of reasons for that. Dan alluded to one of them, and that's that there are just thousands of vendors. So unlike other commodities that you're purchasing, resources that you're purchasing for your business and your operations, you don't always get a choice of who you buy it from. I think there's at least 3,000 electricity companies alone in the U.S. And unless you're in one of the 15 deregulated states, you're going to buy from who it is that's selling it. And when you talk about water and sewer, gosh, I think there's more than 50,000 water companies that you're buying your water from. So that's one of the problems. You can't really consolidate your spend in this category. So to get all of we've got one company who's seeing more than 35,000 invoices a month from their utility category. And they're not massively huge. They're a good sized business, but they're so geographically dispersed that 35,000 invoices a month is a big problem for them to handle. So the number of vendors is a big problem. The other thing too is that there really isn't the availability of electronic files. So Dan mentioned this, right? There's, you can't. Some of the larger providers will give you an EDI file, but it's only the larger ones that will do that. Often it's only the ones that would be in a deregulated market where they do have some sense of a competitive landscape, where they want to serve the customer better to try to hang on to them, because you can switch who you're buying your electricity from every year. But in most cases, you're not going to get EDI. And in particular, because of the regulated nature of a lot of these purchases, there's not much incentive for those utility vendors to join a P2P network. So it's not a competitive commodity in a lot of cases. The utility companies, the last thing they want to deal with is coming up with fancy or more expensive ways for them to deliver their customers' data to their customers. And so That concept just means that this is stayed as a very paper-based kind of subset of invoices within a huge number of corporations. And we have seen in some instances that it represents 25 to 30% of a company's total invoice volume. So that's not great, right? That's not great. So that's a problem that has led to companies like us. That's sort of where we got our start. It's a good thing that it's a messy problem because it's kind of screaming for automation. And as far as your question about what are folks doing to treat those pains, some are going to get EDI feeds where they can. They're comfortable having that type of kind of input into their systems. Then EDI is an option in some cases. Lots of them are using us to do that. We're doing more than 1 million bills a month for people these days in a variety of use cases. And you can kind of consider us effectively sort of an Uber EDI feed that just happens to connect to thousands of utility companies so that you're integrating with our data feed and you're actually effectively getting electronic connectivity to thousands of utility companies. So we're a really good sort of Uber vendor, I guess you could almost consider us to be. Some folks are treating those pains, like I said, as a first step, getting rid of the paper, getting rid of the mailman by just going and downloading bills on the website. That is a step in the right direction, but it's just introducing more resource that's needed to get the invoices. So fully automating not only the collection of the invoices, as well as the data extraction from those invoices is really the best solution, or kind of the best medicine for treating those pains of this highly paper-based invoice set.
Yeah, so what I gathered there, not a whole lot of companies doing EDI, still very paper heavy. Are you seeing any other forms? Do you see those invoices in email form or PDF? How are other companies sending that to AP or to their ERP systems?
Yeah, we do see emailed invoices. We see invoices available on websites. We see sometimes you can get companies to drop off big files full of PDFs. The net of it is our platform kind of considers a PDF, a structured PDF of an invoice, to be a data file. Mm-hmm. And that's really part of the secret sauce for our stuff. A PDF, a structured PDF that you do download from a website or that you do get emailed to you as an attachment. It is a data file. It's a data file that happens to be formatted to be printed with cool graphics and colors and fonts. But if you open it up, inside of it is, field name, field value, location on the page. These are instructions within the data file that allow you to see exactly what it is that's going to be appearing on the bill. And so that is a great data source. So folks don't often consider a PDF, a structured PDF, to be a data file, but it is, and that's what our software specializes in, and pulling those data elements off. So getting to that structured PDF is really the goal of our platform. Most of the time we can do that by going through websites. Sometimes we have to build integrations to email-based deliveries. In Australia, for instance, that's one of the primary means to electronically distribute their invoices to people. If you don't want paper, then you have to give them your invoice or your email, and they'll email it to you as an attachment. So we build automation to recognize those emails coming in and detaching those invoices. So that's those are the primary methods. Sometimes there are OCR technologies that are needed for bills that are only available on paper, and those introduce their own challenges. But sometimes that's the only option that exists. So that's sort of the variety. I think we have, in our last review, we feel like with all the utilities that we've integrated with, at least here in the United States, that we have connectivity for 90% of the nation at least. And I know when we do kind of vendor matchings with people's vendor lists, we normally have at least 85% to 90% match, which means immediately we could provide an electronic version of the delivery of those invoices. And that's, if you can get a switch that you can flip that turns 85% of your invoices into an electronic feed, that's a pretty valuable switch.
And Tim, can I ask you a question on that? I mean, the thing that comes to mind for me is I've always said the value is payables automation or procure to pay is more control, more visibility. But if you really want to take control of that, then you need to move fast. And I think you hinted on the point that speed is important. And I can just perceive that because you are automatically going and picking up utility invoices as they're produced by these utility providers, and because you've already converted it into electronic, maybe you save some time. I mean, I don't know. Are you saving a day or two, even if the enterprise that you work with or we work with has a automation technology? I mean, I can imagine you might be saving a day or two in that process, which arguably, days count when it comes to days payable outstanding, days sales outstanding.
Yeah, for sure. In fact, we see more than a day or two kind of increase in days to pay, I guess. And that's a big thing. We have a lot of our partners are actually paying the bills in some kind of utility bill management solution or something that they are on the hook for getting the bill paid. And they're often seeing that we can get them, in some cases, a week extra. They get the bills there a week sooner. There was something that you talk about, Bob, and the Ardent Partners guys. I saw something that they had reported that said the top performing AP departments are processing 75% of their invoices straight through some kind of automation. And that when they're doing that, those departments are seeing processing times that are 74% faster than people that aren't doing that straight through processing. And that associates with it an 80% reduction in processing costs. So it's not just that it's faster, it's significantly faster, right? 74% faster, but it also lowers your costs for processing those invoices by 80%. So I thought that was a really interesting note that Arden had discovered.
Well, I think one of the reasons that this is all relevant is that this type of technology, when we were in the boom economy, the start of the year, I think companies were often looking to do more, absorb growth, free up their people to do more value and strategic tasks. I think that still is the case, yet we are also seeing furloughs and layoffs and reductions in force, yet the bills still need to get paid on time. And see if the financial leaders still want visibility and the advantages of technology, but in many cases, unfortunately, they're being asked to do this with less folks. That's the painful reality for many organizations.
Yeah, and one of the pain points that I actually failed to mention at the end is that of all those things that make utility invoices in particular a bit more challenging than your average invoice, to make matters worse, the real pain point is that if you miss paying them, you can get shut off.
Right.
So what is the impact of the organization if you have, one of your stores' electricity be turned off for a day or half a day? So the late fees can be significant, and they are not afraid. Again, not a competitive commodity, right? They're not afraid to turn you off if you miss a bill. So these are important invoices to make sure you're handling.
Well, I think I'll segue into the final question here, and again, something we've touched on bits and pieces here and there, but if you had to, I'll start with you, Tim, if you had to highlight some of the most significant benefits realized by your users, what would you call out?
I would probably say three things. Speed and productivity would be the first, right? That number that we got from the IOFM study, that it's 14,000 or 1,400 versus 22,000 invoices per FTE per year, if you can do automation or not. I think that kind of sums up the speed and productivity benefit pretty clearly. The second would be cost savings, just everywhere: resource costs, reduced late fees, errors in the bills for manual entry, shut off, impact to your business. So cost savings would be number two. And the third, I think, really I wouldn't have said probably as much until this year, and that's really a business continuity benefit, especially in this time where people aren't in the office anymore, making sure that you don't interrupt your operations just because there's not somebody there physically in the office to manage these things.
And then back to you, Dan, you can probably zoom out a little bit, just in general, what would you say the most significant benefits might be?
Well, I think it depends on the organization's goals, but for sure, there's plenty of metrics out there from the likes of Ardent Partners and and Gartner, who obviously recognized Esker recently, putting us in a Magic Quadrant. But I think the consistent theme I hear from CIOs and finance leaders is better visibility, control spend. It's a start of the journey. For example, we work with, I think I can give Maxim Tire a plug there in Atlanta. They've said we're going to start this journey by automating accounts payable, controlling a cost, freeing up people to do better valued work. But that's part of the journey where, as part of the change management, we're making folks aware that we're putting in this technology. We would like to sort of creep further into the procurement area where we convert more indirect spend, more non-PO invoices to be more PO-like. So I think it comes down to both cutting of costs, freeing up people to be more productive, ability to scale. You see organizations will often establish shared services. I was talking to a company in the pool and the pool and hot tub space, and they're actually really busy right now. Many people are saying, okay, well, spend on the home went up and has continued to go up. And those folks have said, look, visibility, control of spend, wrapping our arms around the indirect spend process is really key, and that will only continue to sort of grow for both the payables and the back end procure to pay process.
Well, great. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dan and Tim. Really appreciate you coming on the podcast. As always, thank you to our listeners for tuning in. If you're looking for more information on digital transformation in your business processes, you can find us at esker.com. And if you want to learn more about Urjanet, urjanet.com is where you can find them. Until we talk again, stay safe, and we'll see you next time.